by talking about the Ben Ish Chai, the history of the Ben Ish Chai. And tonight Yud Gimel Elul is the Hilul of the Ben Ish Chai, is the Yahrzeit of the Ben Ish Chai. So my family is linked to the Ben Ish Chai in two different ways. One is through marriage. One of the girls, I guess one of his brother's daughters, married into the Bassous family. And I had a cousin who's directly descended of that. Marjorie Bassous, whoever knows her, she was here many years ago. So anyway, so she was very proud of that. She was from El Hacham. She called them El Hacham, the house of the Hacham, from the house of the Hacham. That's the first way. The second way is because my great-grandfather was sent to Calcutta by the Ben Ish Chai to be the rabbi of Calcutta, which is wild. Imagine. So you can imagine he was sent there in the 1800s to be the rabbi of Calcutta. And unfortunately, Calcutta was changing at that time. He only spoke Arabic. And the old generation all spoke Arabic because they all came from Iraq, they all came from Baghdad. But eventually, people started speaking English and things started changing, and so he was sort of getting left behind. He got sort of left behind. But he started his own printing press. And when I was in Hechal Shlomo, which is the chief rabbinate, they have a little museum over there. I found his printed books. I found 2 or 3 of his books, my great-grandfather's books. Okay, so he printed some books over there, including a Haggadah, very nice, beautiful Haggadah, with a commentary in Arabic. So the commentary, just like the Spanish Jews spoke Ladino, and the Ashkenazim spoke Yiddish. So the Jews had their own kind of brand of Ladino, of Arabic written in Hebrew letters. What was it called? Shara. It's called Shara. Anyway, so I want to talk about the Ben Ish Chai, but first, before we even talk about Ben Ish Chai, you have to understand where he came from. He was born in 1832 in Baghdad. So in Babel, Baghdad is Babel. And we know the word Baghdad is mentioned already in the Talmud because there were rabbis already from Baghdad in those days. So the mentioned thousands of years ago. So Baghdad was already mentioned in the Talmud, famous city of Hachamim and scribes. Rashi brings down in his commentary to Brachot 54b, Rav Hana Baghdata. So Rashi says over there, the name of the city is Baghdad, which was an important city of Babel. Amazing. That's very, in the time of the Amoraim. So 1500 years ago already, Baghdad was already on the map as a place of Torah. And we know where the Gemara was written in the Babel. Right? Before that, the first exile, 500 and something BCE, was to Babel. The king of Judah, Yahrzeit, was taken to Babel. And the main Daniel, Mishael, Azariah, all the greats were in Babel. Ezra, Sofer, Yecheskel, the prophet Yecheskel is buried over there, Babel. So the eyes of the world look to Babel. You wanted to answers to your questions, you go to Babel. And then when Israel was destroyed at the second exile, right? Again, the Torah goes back. Where's the Torah? Babel. So Babel was the center of the Jewish world at one time. You have to understand that Babel was the center of the Jewish world. And the entire earth was illuminated by the glory. One of the greatest Geonim was Rav Hai Gaon. Rav Hai Gaon, he was also one of the last of the Geonim. He was the greatest and the last of the Geonim. He passed away in the year 4798, the age of 99. Right? But there was still some Geonim left over. One of them was Rabbi Shmuel ben Eli, the Rosh Yeshiva, the great Yeshiva of Babel, who the Rambam describes this Gaon. He's achieved high stature in the wisdom of the Talmud. He is undoubtedly an elder who sits in the yeshiva. So that's the great Gaon, Shmuel ben Eli. And then Babel started shrinking. People started moving away from Babel. We know there was a reverse movement of Jews from Babel. They started to move to Europe. And the big yeshivot started in Europe. Right? We said the story of the 4 Mishulachim who got shipwrecked in different parts of the coast. And one got shipwrecked in Egypt, one got shipwrecked in Morocco, and one got shipwrecked in Italy. And each one started yeshivot, and that's how the yeshivot moved to Europe. So the Babylonian Jews started moving to Europe. Okay, however, there was a revitalization in the 18th century. In the 19th century, again, you had big Hachamim in Babel. And one of the big Hachamim was the Ben Ish Chai's grandfather, Rabbi Chaim. Rabbi Chaim was one of the big Hachamim. And if you look at the Ben Ish Chai, he always quotes his grandfather, Moshe Chaim, and his father, Eliyahu Chaim. So Rav Moshe Chaim brings back the Torah to Babel, brings back the strength of the Torah to Babel. who was the Ben Ish Chai's grandfather. And his student was Rabbi Abdullah Somech, who was the rabbi of the Ben Ish Chai. Abdullah Somech was the rabbi of the Ben Ish Chai.
His Yahrzeit this Shabbat.
His Yahrzeit is this Shabbat coming. So we have to do something. Abdullah Somech. So Abdullah Somech, we have the Somech family. In fact, they were members of my shul in Vancouver. And members of my brother's shul in London. The Somech family. So they're still going. The Somech family is still going. They're still, Baruch Hashem, they're still religious, which is amazing because a lot of Iraqi Jews stopped being religious because we're going to talk in the history of Iraq. What happened was the Alliance Israélite, the famous French movement to civilize the Sephardic Jews. We want to teach them civilization, teach them French, educate them, and lessen their observance. So they were very strong. When they first came to Iraq, they were put in Cherem. But eventually they developed roots, and the power of the rabbis was diminished. And to the end, till in the 50s already, Jews in Iraq became very, very secular. Very brilliant and very secular. They went to colleges and became very secular. And unfortunately, the ones who kept the faith were the Jews who went to the Far East. Interesting. The Iraqi Jews went to the Far East, kept the faith more than the Iraqi Jews stayed in Iraq. It was very ironic. Because their education was untainted. Then they went to Alliance. There's no Alliance in India or in Singapore or in Hong Kong or in Japan. It's amazing. So they kept their traditions. It's amazing. I had an old lady in my shul in Vancouver who was from Kobe, Japan. Can you imagine they had Sephardic outposts in every single country in the Far East. And that's, you see, the Ben Ish Chai's questions, where they came from. The Rabbi Alim, they came from all over the world. He was universal, the Far East especially, because there's Kehillah was in the Far East. The Kehillah, the people who built Parat Yosef, was a very rich man, Rav Yosef Shalom from Calcutta, India, who built Shoshanim David, one of the big rabbis, one of the big wealthy people in Singapore. There's a synagogue Shoshanim David in Bukhari, near Musayef. It's a big synagogue, Iraqi synagogue. Shoshanim David were great. Rav Yosef studied there. He'd go and lock himself upstairs. Sometimes they locked him in. Locked him in all night. But so Ben Ish Chai was from a glorious grandfather of Moshe Chaim and his father of Eliyahu Chaim. And so at a young age, it says he would hide in the library. His father and his grandfather had a library upstairs. He would hide in the library. He studied Torah day and night. Became greater and greater. At the age of 14, imagine, his father is getting a letter from the rabbis in Israel about, in those days, we're coming to Sukkot. So one of the big questions of Sukkot is etrogim, right? The etrog has got to be a pure etrog. So what happened already in those days, started mixing etrogim and lemons. I think, when you say a car is a lemon, it really comes from this idea that etrog is a lemon. It's not an etrog, it's a lemon. How do you know if an etrog is a lemon or not? And the answer is you can see by the shape, because the lemon is very smooth. If you buy an etrog which is very smooth, it's more lemon than an etrog. The more bumpy it is, that's one of the hindurim of an etrog. People don't like bumpy etrogs. You understand, that is the hindur of the etrog. That's what an etrog looks like. Etrog is bumpy. So if it's not bumpy, it's suspect. It's not an etrog. So the question is, in those days, they started mixing these things up. So they asked the question to his father, what is the status of an etrog which is mixed species? So instead of his father answering it, he looked at the letter, and he wrote a response. Can you imagine, 14 years old, he writes a response to this letter. It's amazing. So, and he sent it to Yerushalayim. And in fact, it's one of the first, in the book Rav Brachot, which is one of his Ben Ish Chai's 60 or so books printed, is the first teshuvah. A teshuvah he wrote at the age of 14, can you imagine? And his father also wrote teshuvah. So the rabbis in Yerushalayim get two teshuvot. One answer from the father, one answer from the son. So first they got the answer from the son, which they're amazed, and then they get the answer from the father. And they tell the father, your son already answered. And he's amazing. You've got to be proud of your son. So his father dies at a very early age. And the entire community comes out to hear the eulogy. He was, I think, 25 or 26. Eventually, he was 25, 26. He says the eulogy for his father. And the people were enchanted by his voice and how he talked. And they made him the main darshan in Baghdad. So whenever there's like the main Shabbatot, the big Shabbatot, they would lock all the shuls and he would be the main speaker. All the big Shabbatot. Shabbat HaGadol, before Pesach, Shabbat Tshuva, they would lock all the other shuls, he would be the main speaker. But anyway, every Shabbat he would give a drasha. Every Shabbat he gave a drasha. We have a gentleman over here, David Ovadia. He said his mother, he just told me now, his mother used to go to the drasha of Ben Ish Chai. Now what's interesting about drasha of Ben Ish Chai, the rabbis were there, all the rabbis sitting in front. Can you imagine, all the rabbis of the community would come in front. Even his own rabbi, Rabbi Abdullah Somech, would come to hear his classes. They all sit in the front. And then you had the men, the women, the children, they will pack in. They're just thousands of people. It said 3,000 people inside, a massive shul. And there were people on the outside, and his voice was clear like a microphone. As if he had a microphone. They could hear him clearly. One of the things that happened when he passed away was his son took over, Chacham Yaakov, and no one could hear him. He said, "How come we could hear your father, you can't hear me?" He said, "Because my father, it was the voice of the Shekhinah speaking from his mouth." And that's what they were mesmerized. Come on, he spoke for 3 hours. Which rabbi today can get away with speaking for 3 hours? There are people like that. But not to have thousands of people. What? Rabbi Yosef was blessed like that as well. Rabbi Yosef could just go on, and people would just mesmerize. He'd tell you stories, he'd entertain you as well. And the Ben Ish Chai would do the same thing. Ben Ish Chai would go hop around. Halacha, a bit of Kabbalah, a bit of Midrash, a bit of this, bit of stories, and a tapestry. So on weekdays, he would pray Vatikin, which is at dawn. And then he would sit and learn Ein Yaakov, teach them Ein Yaakov. The stories, that's where his book, Ben Yehoyada, which by the way became famous, which quoted by ArtScroll. Because how many books are there on Agadata? There's no yeshivot in the world probably learn Agadata. They come to the Agadata, let's skip it. Or read it very fast and skip it. Why? Because Agadata, the stories of the Talmud are the deepest parts of the Talmud. Very hard to understand. A lot of them you cannot understand. That's why people used to make fun of the Midrashim and make fun of the Agadata because they couldn't understand it. So we have to understand that's the hardest parts to understand. So Ben Ish Chai would give classes on the Ein Yaakov, and eventually he wrote books. So you got, I think, how many? There's 3 volumes at least of Ben Yehoyada, of books. So therefore, when the art school has a question on Agadata, they quote Ben Yehoyada says, Ben Ish Chai says. Ben Ish Chai became famous in Ashkenazi world through his Agadata question, because no one else talks about it. There are commentaries on Agadata, but he was one of the Achronim and Agadata. Very amazing. So then after he teaches them Agadata, Ein Yaakov, Agadata, the stories of the Talmud, a 5-volume work, Ben Yehoyada, he gave a daily half-hour class in Halacha, Shulchan Aruch, or Chaim, Yerodea. And every Shabbat he would deliver a drasha and the weekly parasha for 3 hours straight. And the people were just energized by listening to him. It's amazing. I see the children sitting over there. How do children sit still? Can you imagine children sitting still? Where do you find children sitting still? They can't sit for more than 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 40 minutes of class in school. They go crazy. Off the wall. And they're sitting over there 3 hours. There's just remember. Can you imagine David Avadia's mother she lived till 102. She remembers going to the class of Ben Ish Chai on Shabbat and just sitting over there. Look, that's a kid. They're sitting over there. We're going to see other kids as well. Rabbi Yitzhak Kaduri, imagine. A big Mikubal, Yitzhak Kaduri would go as a kid, says, "You got a bracha for the Ben Ish Chai." He would go as a kid to mesmerize. They would sit, mesmerize, and then everyone's standing up afterwards to kiss his hand before the Shabbat. Imagine, your whole afternoon is spent in the synagogue listening to the Ben Ish Chai. What a treat. Whole community is listening to Ben Ish Chai. So during the well-known Shabbatot, Shabbat Teshuvah, Shabbat Zachor, Shabbat Agadol, all the other synagogues in the city would be blocked. Everyone has to go. Tens of thousands of Jews would go to hear his drasha. How can tens of thousands of Jews listen to his drasha? I mean, if you go to Rabbi Yosef's drashot, it was in Bukharim, right? Beit Knesset Bukharim, hundreds of people. I don't think it ever got to 1,000. It was packed. I mean, I remember going there and packed. And he walks in like a king and he walks out like a king and everyone's flocking around and kissing his hand. Like, imagine Ben Ish Chai on Shabbat. That's with a microphone. He has a microphone now. Imagine Ben Ish Chai with no microphone on Shabbat. So they locked all the other shuls and they had this big shul and they all went and they could hear him from outside. Thousands of people. So can you imagine his rabbi, Rabbi Abdallah Somech, would send him books that he composed and asked his students to review for him. You review it for me. And you find mistakes. And he'd review it. So that's why he sent it to him. So amazing. So he was great. The Abbedin of Bavel, Rabbi Cheskel Halevi. If Rabbi Yosef Yahayim would tell me that right is left, left is right, I would not question him. I would say it's halach l'Moshe Sinai. That's how high the status of the Ben Ish Chai was, that even the great rabbis would pay attention to him. And he was famous, world famous. So he wrote to all the great rabbis around in all different other countries, and eventually towards the end of the life, they wanted to make him the Rishon LeZion, the head of the chief rabbinate in Israel, Sephardic chief rabbi of Israel. Where was Israel? Yes, it was Palestine, but he refused. He never had an official title in his life. He was in the rabbinate. He was now a rabbi in Baghdad. He was the darshan. He would give drashot, but behind the scenes, everyone knew who was the greatest rabbi. Everyone knew that he was the greatest rabbi. He went to Israel to visit. We're going to talk about that. Yeah, we're going to talk about his visits. So first, the book starts talking about his grandfather, Rabbi Chaim, and the big tzaddik, born in 1752 and served as a rabbi. He really rejuvenated Baghdad. He rejuvenated Iraq. He rejuvenated the Jews of Iraq. And for many years, he kept his scholarship secret. One day, he had a dispute with the head of the Baghdad Beit Din. And the controversy reached the Arab minister who had been appointed by the Pasha, which was in Turkey, to oversee the governance of the Jewish communities. So the minister dismisses Hacham Moshe Chaim's position without a second thought. So Hacham Moshe Chaim, he leaves Baghdad and he goes to Basra, which is another city on the port. That's where my great-grandfather, he had a boat, and he can imagine, Basra was a port city. They all had boats, and they would go and trade with the Far East. So he moved to Basra, and they gave him great honor over there. He was made the community rabbi. And then a very complex halachic question was brought for the Dayanim of Baghdad regarding Naguna. Now, Guna is the hardest question. Husband abandoned her, and she's left. Now, what do you do with her? So today, like, who do you send a letter like that? When I had a Naguna in the community, there was an Ashkenazi woman who was a Naguna. Husband lived in Lakewood, would refuse to give her a get. So I did some investigation. I found out that one of the edim at the wedding was not kosher. So I sent a letter to the RCA, Beit Din, to find out what's her status. Can you release her? What do? They send a letter to Rabbi Yosef. The RCA Beit Din sends a letter to Rabbi. They said, can you imagine, there's no other rabbi in the world who would like to touch this. They had to send it to the Sephardic rabbi. The Ashkenazi rabbi sent it to the Sephardic rabbi, Rabbi Yosef, to touch this. It's one of the hardest questions in halakha because it's a question of mamzerut. If you allow this woman to get married without a get, the child could be a mamzer. Now, who's going to take that responsibility on their head? So that's the question. Who's going to take responsibility? Rabbi Yosef. So in those days, who would take responsibility on the head? The Beit Din in Baghdad was scared. So here, Rabbi Moshe Chaim, the Beit Chaim's grandfather, writes a very lengthy response, and they're amazed. This guy's a top guy. So they promptly invited him to return to Baghdad, and they made him the rabbi of the city. This is the Beit Chaim's grandfather becomes the rabbi of the city of Baghdad, the chief rabbi of Baghdad. And he held this position for 50 years. 50 years he held this position of chief rabbi of Baghdad. And he passed away on 1836. He passed away in 1836. So he was the head of the Beit Din, and he made new takanot, new minhagim. He was the big darshan. He would deliver all the classes in Baghdad, and again on the 4 important Shabbatot, they would lock all the doors of the synagogues. He would give the classes. His grandfather. He also had a very large yeshiva, and that's what really rejuvenated all the Baghdad. So all the great rabbis were produced in his yeshiva. So his students included many other. We have a guy in our shul called Nawi. His last name is Nawi. There was a very big rabbi, Rabbi Reuven David Nawi. Interesting, probably one of his ancestors. He became the head of the Beit Din of Baghdad. Rabbi Abdallah Somech, who is known as author of Zivchei Tzedek, who was a teacher of Ben Ish Chai. Rabbi Eliyahu Ovadia, imagine, so he learned from his grandfather's student. Ben Ish Chai was a student of his grandfather's student, as well as his father. So his name spread all over the world. One of the people who talked about him was the famous disciple of Vilna Gaon, Rabbi Yisrael ben Shmuel Ashkenazi of Shkolov. Okay, so he was moved to Israel because the Vilna Gaon told his students to move to Israel. It was the first big movement of Ashkenazi Jews. Aliyah was the Vilna Gaon students, and then the Baal Shem Tov students. Interesting. They both sent their students to Eretz Israel. They both wanted to go to Eretz Israel. And he wrote his book Peat HaShulchan. It's one of the classics in halacha of the fruits of Eretz Israel. Truma Maaseh Peat HaShulchan. This is a student of Vilna Gaon, writes the book, and he sends a copy to Rabbi Moshe Chaim in Baghdad to get a haskama. Imagine, the student of Vilna Gaon is sending a copy of his sefer to get haskama, and he gets the haskama. He had a haskamot from 27 different rabbis. And he says, look what he says. This Rabbi Yisrael describes this as haskama. He's so happy. He said, the great Gaon, the candle of Israel, the towering pillar, the elder, the most learned of the yeshiva Bavel, the jewel of his generation. He copied this from what the Gemara says about Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai. He says this about Rabbi Moshe Chaim, who was the grandfather of Ben Ish Chai. So Ben Ish Chai came from a very holy family. He came from it wasn't just Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai was based on holiness. 3 generations, at least. We don't know how far back it goes. We do know that his So it's interesting because Ben Chaim brings down the takanot of his grandfather. So one of the takanot was he puzzled all the tefillin in the city. Imagine a rabbi comes along and says, "All your tefillin pasul." What happened? Because he found that the tefillin were not square, and eventually there was a technique. They brought a sofer. Rabbi Yehuda Ashkenazi, who was a Syrian Jew. The name Ashkenazi means his ancestors were Ashkenaz. They moved to Syria, Halab, and they would say the last name Ashkenaz. So just like you have Jews who are called Franco because they came originally from France or from Italy. So you can be Yehuda Ashkenazi, very famous. You go to Deal or Brooklyn, you find the whole family. That's Ashkenazi, they call him. The last name is Ashkenazi. They're Sephardim now. So he was an expert batim maker from Syria, who taught the local batim makers to properly square the tefillin. So Moshe Chaim sees how he makes his tefillin. He sees the tefillin in Baghdad. He says, "All your tefillin are pasul. You have to buy tefillin from him. And he knows how to make it square." Can you imagine what power he had? The people listen to him. They're talking about hundreds of thousands of people have to make all the tefillin now is pasul. Can you imagine overnight? It's tefillin are pasul.
They could still use the parchment, right?
Yeah, parchment you can use, but you have to find different batim, put them in different boxes. He ruled that all the Jews of Babel have to follow the rulings of the Chidah. So the Chidah became the rabbi of Iraq as well. So we follow the Chidah. Our tefillot are based on the Arizal, based on the Rashash, based on the Chidah, and based on Ben Ishchai. That's the tefillah. That's our tefillah. And he overruled practices. At Baghdad, it says there was a big safek. Was it a walled city at the time of Joshua or not? So what happened was they kept 2 days Purim, out of doubt. Like you do sometimes in Israel. Some places in Tiberia, they keep 2 days Purim. So the question is, you pay 2 days Purim. Not both days are put on Purim. The first day is Purim, and the second day is Safek. So you say Al Nisim on the first day, and the second day you don't say Al Nisim. You just keep it at Safek. In Baghdad, they kept 2 days Al Nisim. So his grandfather stopped them saying Al Nisim on the second day. Can't say Al Nisim on both days. So he said, because that's going to be a hefsek. You're putting Al Nisim in a place where you don't really have to say Al Nisim. It's a break in your tefillah. So he stopped them. And he is the one who made them strict to follow the Magen Abraham's opinion. That the Jewish halachic day goes from Amud HaShachar, from dawn, till Tzedek Kochavim, in which case the Shema is earlier. Right? The Magen Avraham is much earlier than the Vilna Gaon, right? Yeah, so Vilna Gaon says the day starts from Netz, from sunrise till sunset. The Magen Avraham says no, the day starts from... It's a very old opinion. So Ben Ishchai, his grandfather, he made the custom of Baghdad like the Magen Avraham. You start from Amud HaShachar, so which case the Shema is earlier. So you have to get up earlier, say Shema earlier, pray earlier, everything became earlier. There was an interesting custom in those days that a Chatan on Shabbat, imagine, they would hire non-Jewish musicians to accompany the Chatan to the synagogue. Beautiful, isn't that a beautiful custom? You stopped it. You can't hire non-Jews to play music for you on Shabbat. So as his grandfather, until his time, it's interesting, these little things which are massive halachic issues. He found that shochatim were using thick knives instead of very thin knives. Imagine the quality of metal in those days was I don't know how the shochatim. See the old knives, they're made of iron. There's no stainless steel in those days. So iron, they get rusty, and when they get rusty, you scrape them and they get thinner. So they started off with very thick knives, which were pretty much blunt. So if the knife is not smooth, it's pasul. Shechita is pasul, straightforward. But if the knife is smooth, but it's just blunt, you just have to keep on. Trouble is, you start pushing, and that's drasa. That's asur. That's one of the things which make a shechita pasul. And therefore, he came along. He cut a shak. And Moshe Chaim comes to inspect the knives of the shachatim in Baghdad. Not only did he say all the knives are pasul, he says all the shechita was pasul. All the pots and pans are treif. Imagine what power the rabbi has to come along and say, all the community over here, all your pots and pans are treif. Gosh, scary. And then he threw out all the shachatim, and only the shachatim has thin knives allowed to practice. So Abdullah Somech writes in his book, from this time on he says, praise be Hashem, all of Baghdad and the small surrounding villages began to slaughter with only thin, sharp knives. Can you imagine? So if the rabbi is not hands-on, doesn't know what shechita is, most rabbis don't know what shechita is. They don't check the shechita knife in the... You have to know and go and check. Who's the mashgiach over there? You just rely on the shachatim, who knows what they are? Who knows what they're doing? That's one of the problems of, in Machane Yehuda today, on Erev Yom Kippur, they go and they do kaparot. Now who's doing kaparot? So it says these shachatim are up all night. Ben Ishchai himself writes in Baghdad, these shachatim are up all night, and they're bleary-eyed, and their fingers are not working anymore. See what the knives are, and they're just shakating. Gotta watch out, or you're gonna get treif. He's going to have nevelot. Okay. So he made many takanot. His grandfather is very, very powerful. So in his book on Yosef Chaim, the Ben Ish Chai writes this story. He said, I heard the story from my grandfather, that one day an Arab will try to test my grandfather. So what did he do? He writes Bet Bet Aleph on a piece of paper. He gets a Jew to write Bet Bet Aleph. And he comes to my grandfather, tell me what is Bet Bet Aleph. Okay? So grandfather says, Bereshit bara Elokim. The Arab said, how do you know? So Arab he could read people's minds. Yeah, that's all the idea. So straight away, he didn't even blink. Bet Bet Aleph, what is the Arab trying to say? Bet Bet Aleph, Bereshit bara Elokim, the first three letters, three words in the Torah. Anyway, I have a very beautiful gematria over here. Yosef Chaim is a gematria 224, right? So this year is 5777 still. Till the year 6000. How many years left? 224, if you count the 6000 as well. So 224. So his gematria of his name, Yosef Chaim, is 224, which is exactly the same amount of years we have left. So which is also the word derech. So we have derech, we still have a way to go. The derech, the way to the 6,000 is derech. So it's the same much as the years we have left.
Was he the one who composed the Tefillah of Hamilton by Darech?
I don't know. I don't think so. He did compose different pismonim. For example, Bar Yochai Nimshachta Ashrecha. People don't realize it was a Ben Ish Chai wrote it, right?
I think that was Rav Shimon Rabbi, I think.
But the Ben Ish Chai wrote Va'amartem Kol Chai.
Yeah,
Va'amartem Kol Chai, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. That was Ben Ish Chai, very famous. Everyone sings it. Even the Hasidim sing it today. Va'amartem Kol Chai, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So that's Ben Ish Chai wrote when he went to his trip on Israel. When he went to Meron, he wrote the song. And one of the rich guys was so impressed with that song, he engraved it on a gold plate and he gave it back to him. He engraved it. So anyway, 108 years since his passing. 108 is 6 times Chai. Okay? His name was Yosef, and Yosef HaTzadik is number 6 in the Sfirot. Right? If you go look in Sukkot, we're going to do it in Sukkot, right? You have Abraham, Yitzhak, Yaakov, Moshe, Aaron, Yosef, number 6. Yes. So 6 times Chai. Yosef's name was Yosef. Chaim. Chaim is Chai. Chai, plural Chai. So Yosef times 6, plural Chai. Okay, so there's plenty of different gematriot, very beautiful gematriot about Ham Yosef Chaim.
Yeah, and Yosef is the Midah of Yesod,
yes.
Which is 80, which is Yud Gimel Elul.
Yes, Yud Gimel Elul is 80, gematriot, which is the 8th Sephirah. So, okay, so Moshe Chaim was brilliant. He's also Dayan. So 2 people came to him once. One was an Arab. He said, the Jew owes me money. They come to you, Moshe Chaim. Moshe Chaim says, okay, you wait here over here. I need to go home and do something quickly. Instead, he goes upstairs, and in the women's section, he's listening to them talking. And the Arab tells the Jew, well, how do you tell lies to the rabbi? You're telling lies to the rabbi. You owe me money. The Jew says, I know, but I can't afford to pay you right now. So Moshe Chaim comes down. Says, listen, I heard you guys. So you admitted to him that you owe money. So you can't afford, so he tells the Arab, will you take installments? And the Arab says, yes. And the Arabs, they're amazed at this guy, a little bit tricky, but you have to be tricky when you deal with these people. You have to be tricky. There was another case where the guy wanted to swear. He's willing to swear that he didn't owe any money, but he was a liar. So Moshe Chaim says, you know what? I'm not going to make you swear on Sefer Torah. I'm going to make you swear on the Shnei Luchot HaBrit. The guy is thinking, Shnei Luchot HaBrit. He has the Shnei Luchot HaBrit of Moshe Rabbeinu. He's terrified. I'm going to say on Shnei Luchot HaBrit. So he really intended Shnei Luchot HaBrit is the book by the Shlah. Shnei Luchot HaBrit. So you have it here, Shnei Luchot HaBrit. So amazing. So he was terrified. He said, no, I'm not going to swear. I won't swear. I admit. So that's how he got him to admit. So that's Rabbi Moshe Chaim. And his father was Rabbi Eliyahu Chaim. He was born in Bagdad 1807. He is renowned as a Talmid Hacham, both the revealed Torah, the hidden Torah. And as for his humility, he stayed away from fame and honor. He was a businessman. And he would distribute lots of money to the poor. Interesting. His name was Eliyahu. So can you imagine, on Motzei Shabbat, he would dress up in disguise. Every Motzei Shabbat, he'd dress up in disguise, and he'd put bags of money in his pockets, and he'd go down the street, he'd know where the poor people lived, and he'd knock on the door, and he'd say, who is it? Eliyahu. And he'd throw money there and run away. So people thought it was Eliyahu Navi was coming around. So he said, Eliyahu. So he kept all these people, he says he wouldn't sit down to eat his Shabbat meal till he knew that everyone in the town had food. Sadiq. So he has a book also called Midrash Eliyahu. He explains all the biblical verses through Kabbalah. So he studied Kabbalah with Rabbi Eliyahu Mani, who became the chief rabbi of Hebron. So interesting. The Ben Ish Chai says about his father. He says, my father always had a special pocket where he kept his tzedakah money. This way, no one would have to wait for him. When he asked for tzedakah, he wouldn't have to wait, go through his pockets. This I'll give you, this I'll give you. He had it ready in a special pocket. He would give several times a day using large coins. He would give the poor and perform other mitzvot with the money, which he unfailingly distributed twice a day. So he gave shacharit and mincha, and he would say l'shem yichud before he gave the money. Make the unification of God's name. He would do this with great joy and excitement. And amazing. So his father was a big tzaddik. They had a Shabbat room in the house. What does that mean? That means it was a room only used for Shabbat. They ate their meal on Shabbat only in that room. And the kids were so excited, they wanted to go into the Shabbat room. It's locked. The whole week is locked. So this way on Shabbat, it was like a special experience. Imagine, interesting idea. They had a very big house. And they had a Shabbat room. So all week long, they waited for the excitement to go into the house, to the room of the locked room, Shabbat room. And then they were the ones who went inside and they set the tables, and they were very excited. Okay. So it says there's two different stories over here, which shows how his father educated his son. Every day he would give, by Barak David, 3 coins into the tzedakah box. You give 2 and then 1, right? So Friday, it says he would put by his place, by his seat, where he sat on Shabbat, he would put 3 coins on the windowsill. So Ben Ish Chai says, father, why are you putting 3 coins on the windowsill? He said, because on Shabbat I can't put the coins. Oh yeah, it's mukseh. But I put them before Shabbat, and then after Shabbat I'm going to give them the tzedakah. So you can imagine, so just like he would give his coins every day, he made sure even on Shabbat, he would also give the coins after Shabbat. He would separate before Shabbat and give them after Shabbat. So that's an interesting thing. Some people say there was another version of this story. They both may be true. And on Shabbat he would give 3 chalot to the poor. Instead of coins are mukseh. So he give 3 small chalot to the poor. So the shamashim. And it says many people started copying him, and the janitors of the shul suddenly started getting every Shabbat they get 3 chalot from people. So he wouldn't have to do anything. So his father started that. Very beautiful. Very beautiful stories. And it says every Shabbat, Friday, he would give his kids money to buy snacks. So all the kids would go to run buy snacks. Ben Ish Chai, everyone asked him, he was the oldest of all the kids. Where's your snacks? He said, I ate them already. So his sister didn't believe him. One day his sister follows him. When everyone's going to buy snacks, they see where the Ben Ish Chai is going. So he went to the bakery and bought bread, and he gave it to a poor widow. So it's the Ben Ish Chai. So she comes back and says, Daddy, you know what happens to his snacks? He says he eats his snacks. He's a liar. So Daddy said, what does he do with snacks? He says he takes the money, buys bread, and gives it to the widow. So his father says, I'll give you double. Now I know you're using it. I'm going to give you double. So beautiful education they got in the home. A very holy, pious education that made the Ben Ish Chai himself. So Ben Ish Chai was born in Baghdad, 1834, September 1st, which is very close to his passing. He was born, some people say 1835. And he was the Bechor, he was the firstborn, and he would hide in his father's library day and night to hear his father learning Torah and his halakha. And Rabbi Yehuda Fataya, we read his book, Nefashot Mesaprot, Neshamot Mesaprot. He says that the Ben Ish Chai's soul belonged to the ear of the Talmudic sages. His soul was the soul of Tanaim. He had the soul of a Tanaim. And there's different legends over here. Some people say his mother couldn't have any children, and she went all the way to Morocco, to Abir Yaakov, the Rabbi Abu Chasira's grandfather, to get a bracha. It's a long way to go.
Yeah, the guy, he was 25 years old when he was born. It
That's very hard. So I guess that was a legend.
They want to connect the two.
Yeah, they want to connect the two. Okay. So anyway, what the true story is that Ben Ish Chai fell into a well. 7 years old. He fell into a well. So he says, my name is Yosef. What happened to Yosef? They put him into a bore. So I fell into a well. And in the well, it says he drowned pretty much in the well. They brought him up, he was lifeless. He couldn't breathe. And they put him on the bed, and the doctor came, nothing. The father came, said Tehillim, suddenly he starts arousing. He starts breathing. And he slept the whole night. That whole night he slept. And he wakes up in the morning as if nothing happened. He couldn't remember that he fell into the well. They tell him the story. So the little kid makes a vow. Imagine, he makes a vow. He says, I promise from now on I will dedicate my entire life to Torah study about Hashem. That was his vow. And that's what happened. So can you imagine? So I'm giving now the stories about when he was a little kid, 4 years old. Rabbi Yosef Chaim is now 4 years old. So his father, can you imagine, how old is he?
4.
4. Yeah, listen to this story.
Listen to the story.
The Ben Ish Chai was 4 years old. And his father asked him, he says, tell me, he says, it says, when Adam was hiding from God, right, in the Garden of Eden, right? It says, Hashem says, Ayeka, where are you? Adam, where are you? So he asked his son, he says, how could it be? Hashem says, where are you? Hashem knows where everyone is. What do you mean? Why did he ask him, where are you? So look at the Ben Ish Chai's answer. Ayeka, he says, is abbreviation for Ani Yodea Kol HaNistarot. Hashem says, Ayeka. Ani Yodea Kol HaNistarot. I know all the secrets. Hashem studying it. So literally it means where are you? But it's an acronym for the words Ani Yodea Kol HaNistarot. I know all the secrets. Wow. So and then again another story. Now he had a fight with his sister. The sister seems to be the same sister, bugging him all the time. About who's going to hold the Havdalah candle. Okay, big thing to hold the Havdalah candle. So his father said, let your sister hold it. But I'll let you hold it if you can tell me why the blessings of the Havdalah in their order. Why first you say the wine, and then you say the samim, and then you say the candle, then you say Havdalah. Why is in that order? So Ben Ish Chai says, because you're working up the different senses in your face. The bracha on the wine is, because that's the lowest part. That's the lowest sense, taste. The bracha on the smell, that's the next part. And the bracha on the candle is the next part, and the bracha of Havdalah is in your head. So it's the highest part. So you're working, come on, a little kid saying this answer. The father says, okay, you hold the candle. Amazing, little kid. So he was an amazing prodigy. He was a prodigy. So after completing his studies in local Talmud Torah, before Bar Mitzvah, he learned privately with his uncle, his mother's brother, who later moved to Jerusalem and founded the yeshiva Shoshanim David, as we talked about Shoshanim David, which was funded by one of the rich people in Singapore. At the age of 15, he enrolled in the yeshiva Beit Zilka, which is his grandfather's student, Rabbi Dalaf Somech, and he became a very big student of Rabbi Dalaf Somech, his primary disciple. And when he came home, he would lock himself in his father's study and review everything he learned until he committed to memory. So basically, he was studying nearly day and night. In 1853, age of 18, Ben Shmonasrei le Chuppah. He gets married. Age of 18, he gets married. He married Rachel. Right? Ben Ish Chai married Rachel, the daughter of Hacham Yehuda Somech, a relative of his teacher, Rabbi Dalaf Somech. And he continues learning until he gets age 22. He has correspondence with all the great rabbis around him. One of the big rabbis, Rabbi Chaim Falaji, was the chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire. Can you imagine? Rabbi Hambashi, he was the Hambashi. Chief rabbi of the Ottoman Empire is called the Hambashi. And so here he is, this 22-year-old, having correspondence with the chief rabbi of Ottoman Empire, of Chaim Falaji. And Chaim Falaji gives him titles, massive titles, like for the leaders of the generation. He addressed the Ben Ish Chai at the age of 22. Amazing. Okay, so amazing greatness. But he was well known, everyone knew him as an orator. He was one of the best speakers you could ever get. And Rav Aaron Soraski, he writes in his work, Orot HaMizrach, he writes, in Hashem's great mercy for his exiled children in Baghdad, he gave the godly man, Hacham Yosef Chaim, the Ben Ish Chai, whose words inspired the Jewish communities of the Middle East, from Iraq all the way to North Africa. So his speeches were so well known, eventually written down. And thousands of people would come. Can you imagine sitting down, men, women, children, all sitting down, listening to his speeches. Amazing. I just want to read you what Hacham Yoshua Moshe writes about his first-hand account of what happened in the speech. Every Shabbat afternoon, before Sudah Shishit, he would deliver his regular drasha on the parasha in the synagogue. It would last for 3 hours. The synagogue was filled with people. Even the greatest scholars would come to hear his drashot. He would connect his message to halakha as printed in his work, Ben Ish Chai, and he would then conclude by speaking about the redemption in order to comfort us in our exile. Then they would pray mincha, and then the whole congregation would follow him to home. as he made his way to perform Sulah Shit. As they left the synagogue after drasha, every person felt the Mashiach was about to arrive any minute. They give them pep talk about Mashiach, Geulah. They felt Mashiach's coming. So he says he truly mastered the art of public speaking. Besides engaging content and loud, resonating voice, he also incorporated humor and even theatrics in his presentation. Amazing, hard to see. But the Rabbi said it was exactly like that. Very theater. He put on voices and tell you the story is amazing, in an amazing way. On Purim Day, following the Megillah reading, he would deliver a shiur to members of the yeshiva and reveal profound insights into every verse of the Megillah. He would sit down in a way to show the crowd how Haman was enslaved by Mordechai, and the crowd would erupt in laughter. Not even a hint of a smile crossed his lips. Only a glint of humor, as befitting a man of his great stature. As he left the synagogue, poor people would wait for him, and he would distribute several coins to each one, without paying attention to how much he gave to whom. Using money, that's what we say, on Purim is one of the few days you don't have to check who you're giving to, you just give. So he gave everyone. So that's it. No one could make up for his voice. Apparently his voice is amazing. Everyone could hear him. Right? So Ben Ish Chai. Very, very amazing. Okay, let's move on. We have to talk about his writings. Ben Ish Chai's writings, you can't talk about Ben Ish Chai without his writing. His books have been a source of guidance and inspiration for generations of Jews around the world. So even if you have no biographical data about the Ben Ish Chai, just by reading his books you'll see his great stature in Torah. Dozens of volumes he produced, form a foundation of Torah scholarship. I myself, one of the first Jewish books I really studied in depth was Ben Ish Chai. We had shiur every day in our shul. Every day in our shul, Ben Ish Chai. I learned Hebrew from the Ben Ish Chai, basically. How do you learn Hebrew, understand Hebrew? Ben Ish Chai, better than high school. I learned more Hebrew from learning Ben Ish Chai than I learned from high school. So our shul was really revolving around Ben Ish Chai. Our lives revolved around Ben Ish Chai. The Iraqi Jews' lives around the Siddur was the Siddur of the Ben Ish Chai. The synagogue Minhagi was the Minhagi of the Ben Ish Chai. The book, the Halakha was all Ben Ish Chai. Rabbeinu was fluent in every aspect of the entire pardes of the Torah. That's unusual. See, a person who's expert in Pshat, a person expert in Remez, a person in Drash, Sod, but he is expert in everything. He was not only an expert in laws of kashrut and prayer, but also in the laws of family life, civil laws, for such all the cases of Beit Din were decided by him. So Hacham Ben Zion Abba Shaul says, whoever learns the Ben Ish Chai's books will be rewarded with holiness and fear of heaven. Because he had Yirat Shamayim. He had Yirat Shamayim. The Ben Ish Chai had Yirat Shamayim. Pure fear of heaven. He chose to have his books printed specifically in Yerushalayim. Imagine, he didn't want his books printed anywhere else, only in Yerushalayim. He wants to renew the industry of Yerushalayim, give people jobs in Yerushalayim, send money to Yerushalayim. Okay, so he wanted his books printed in a holy place, and by doing so, he would send his writings through dangerous, just walking from Iraq to Israel in those days was dangerous. So he would send his manuscripts to Yerushalayim, and it's interesting because the publishing houses were Ashkenaz. They could barely read his writing. He's written in Sephardic script, which is Rashi script, and they could barely read. He says the books of this is the Frumkin publishing house. The books of Hacham of Yosef Chaim, the Rabbi Bagdad, were regularly printed on my father's printing press. This is the publisher printing, the printer. Handwritten manuscripts would arrive in the Ottoman mail, delivered by Ottoman postal carriers about 40 days after being dispatched from Baghdad. Imagine 200 miles, 40 days it took by mail. Like all the other cargo, the mail was transported on camelback and would travel a long journey across the desert. It's amazing it got there. Frumkin noted that workers in the press had difficulty reading the manuscripts. The handwriting was not like the handwriting of other rabbis. It was clear and written on one side of the paper only, but only a few people could read it because it was written in the script of the Sephardim. Amazing. So the first book he printed was Rab Brachot, and a Kabbalist living in Yerushalayim was Hacham Abraham Ades, the famous Ades family, Kol Yaakov, Yeshiva Kol Yaakov in Yerushalayim. Hacham Abraham read the whole book, and he told everyone this book has a smell of Kedusha in it. The leading rabbi of Sfat, the Ridbaz, Ashkenazi rabbi, Rabbi Yaakov David Wilovsky, purchased copies of the Ben Ish Chai's works as soon as they were published. And he said when he studied the Ben Ish Chai's books, he could sense the Kedusha radiate from them. Amazing. It's recorded that during World War One. This is an amazing story. This is a wild story. Rav Chaim Soloveitchik of Brisk told his students who'd be forcibly drafted into the Russian army to take with him the rabbi's books, Ben Ish Chai, into the Russian army to keep them Jewish. I find that hard to understand, you know.
Yeah.
Why not Kitzur Shulchan Aruch? Take the Ben Ish Chai.
Because it was the army of...
To learn the weekly parasha and the halacha.
Ben Yehuda was the general of the... that was one.
Yeah, still, but okay. I find that hard to understand. Okay. In addition to his published books, he also wrote a commentary on the Sefer Gilgulim, book of reincarnations, which was written by Rav Chaim Vital, and he kept this book under lock and key. So what happened was one day, his son is very precocious, Yaakov, wasn't very great, and when the Ben Ish Chai was going to give his drasha on Shabbat, Rav Yaakov said, I'm going to sneak out, go home, open up and read his book, his manuscript. So he runs home, the Ben Ish Chai stops his drasha, runs after him. Says, don't you dare peek in my book. You're not allowed to. And he changed the hiding place, and that was it. So can you imagine, he knew exactly what he's up to, his son. He could read his mind. He could read people's minds. That's the trouble. These people could read people's minds.
Do we have it now?
No. It's gone. Chacham Yitzhak Kaduri told Hacham Benayahu Shmueli that he owned this book of, this Ben Ish Chai wrote the book, where he wrote down the names of the Hachamim of that time, who they were from. That's why he wanted to hide it. It was very, like this rabbi. But he would tell the rabbi privately, you know, he wrote down in the Sefer Gilgulim, who are these people? For example, his rabbi, Rabbi Abdallah Somech, he said had the soul of Achaz. Achaz was the father of Hiskiyahu HaMelech, who Hiskiyahu HaMelech disgraced. He rolled him in a bag, he put the bones in a sackcloth, in a bag of sack, and he rolled it to his grave. Achaz. But you have to understand, that was the good part of the soul of Achaz. It wasn't the bad part of the soul of Achaz. So there's another rabbi who said he had the soul of Ahab, king of Israel. So that's why he had this book. He's writing down who is who. Of the people of the generation, the rabbis of the generation, who is who. But again, you got to understand, it was a good part of the reincarnation. So in Ben Yehoyada, he says explicitly, the Ben Ish Chai in Ben Yehoyada, and his commentary like Galitzah, I will tell you another chidush about a Torah scholar from our city who dreamed about another God-fearing Torah scholar. May the Almighty grant him long life. He is a reincarnation of Ahab, the king of Israel. He thought about himself. He had a dream that this Torah scholar is from the Ahab, king of Israel. The time in Hacham was the subject of the dream, had difficulty accepting he was a reincarnation of Ahab. He was pained by it. Well, I am Ahab, I'm my soul. He said, don't be distressed. Number one is you have your own soul. And only a part of Ahab's soul is reincarnated in you. And why do you look down on Ahab? Ahab must have had a very big soul. He was a king of Israel. He must have been a very big soul. And this is a good part of the soul. There's no one else in our generation whose soul can match the good portion of Ahab that you is reincarnated in you. I told him that God would grant him a good, peaceful, long life and would help him rectify his own soul as well as the soul that's reincarnated in him. So he would tell people who they are. Where their souls come from. Amazing. So no fewer than 60 written works of the Ben Ish Chai being published. And we know, thank you, Makabziel was published as well. So over here, it's still, it wasn't found yet. So here, I'll tell you what it says about Makabziel. Rabbeinu makes mention of his book Makabziel many times, the Ben Ish Chai, Rapperim, and elsewhere. It seems this work contained analysis of the Talmud and the Rishonim as well as some halachic material. Unfortunately, this work was lost. Where was it lost? Because Parat Yosef Yeshiva was destroyed by the Jordanians in 1948. And they destroyed their manuscripts. Everything was burnt by a fire. And they had precious manuscripts going back from the Rashash. Hundreds of years, manuscripts from Yerushalayim, all the old city of Yerushalayim. The big manuscripts ended up in the Parat Yosef, and they were burnt by the Jordanians. So Baruch Hashem, we found parts of this manuscript, the Kapsiyot. So the rabbis of Babel say he wrote about 80 books. So about 60 are published. Imagine 80 books in a person's lifetime. 80 books, prolific. Many books were confiscated by the Iraqi government. I wonder how many Saddam Hussein had, and how many ended up in Washington, because they found them in the dungeon of the Mukhabarat, which is the secret police. They found all the old Sefer Torahs and old manuscripts, and they're ruined by the water, because when they bombed Iraq, the pipes started bursting. So I don't know, but they took them to Washington. No one knows what's happening to them. Hopefully someone's involved over there. Someone's going through them. It's like the Cairo Geniza. It's much more important than the Cairo Geniza. Not only did he write books, he wrote poetry, he wrote songs, piyutim. He wrote Piyutim for Shabbat, for Motzei Shabbat, Rosh Chodesh, Bar Mitzvah. We have the songs in the songbook, Ben Ish Chai's songs. He wrote all the Jewish holidays. I remember in my shul in London, every occasion they would sing. Shabbat Para. Okay, sing a song for Shabbat Para. Every occasion, Shabbat Gadol, you got to sing Shabbat, and they would have a contest who's going to sing louder. Oh boy, it was wild. And they were out of tune, completely out of tune, but it was amazing. All the Iraqi men, they're just like, oh, what holiday today? Purim. Okay, bring the book. Bring the book. They pass out all the song books, and everyone sing the song of the holiday. Okay. Okay, let's move on. Just want to finish off. I just want to say some stories. Okay. So here's some of the amazing stories. The stories told two merchants in Baghdad. So they're busy. They're both in furniture and clothing. So they were hurrying to the home of certain non-Jews selling merchandise. A person stops and says, hey, I'm in there 10th man for the minyan. So one merchant went in and one merchant ran to do business. He said, I can't lose the business. So the merchant went in and said, I'm going to lose business. What can I do? I'm going to lose business. What am I going to do? I don't have any opportunities. The guy's going to buy the best part of the stuff. So he goes into the minyan to make the minyan to recite Kaddish. After the Kaddish was over, he goes and does his business. But he gets to the house, he finds the other merchant bought all the best stuff. And he just finds rags over there. So what can I do? That's all that's left. He bought the rags. And in the rags he found a pearl. It's amazing. In the rags he finds a pearl. And he goes to the jeweler and he sells the pearl for 50 gold coins. Imagine 50 gold coins for the pearl. When he gets home, his wife has a fight with him. You bought 50 gold coins for that pearl, you could have got much more, go back, exchange it, get it back, so you can sell it for a higher price. He said, not so fast, let me go to the Ben Ish Chai. He goes to the Ben Ish Chai. The Ben Ish Chai says, listen, you enabled them to say Kaddish. Kaddish, it was only half Kaddish. It was a Kaddish before Baruch Hu. A Kaddish has 5 amens. That Kaddish only has 5 amens. Each amen is worth 10 gold coins. So you sold it for the right amount. You got paid back exactly. Amazing. Amazing. So all these miracles, these are wonderful miracles. I want to tell you this miracle which was done by his son. Wow. Rabbi Yaakov. There's many miracles anyway. One day there was a kid. This is a true story. One day there was a kid who had no respect for Jews. So when they're praying in the synagogue, Mincha or Shabbat, the guy comes and he urinates on the walls of the synagogue. What happened? He turned into a stone. That kid turned into a stone. And the Ben Ish Chai is coming out, ignores him, goes home. The parents are looking for the kid. They just say, listen, go see, you'll find him outside the shul. They look over there, the kid's not moving, he's immobilized. Imagine he's like that, immobilized.
Petrified.
What should we do? Go to the rabbi. They run to the Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai, our kid, what are you going to do? Ben Ish Chai says, listen, your kid, that's it, there's no hope for your kid. There must be. They plead with him. So if you build a wall around the shul, I guarantee your kid will come back to life. So they hire workers to build a wall around the shul. 3 days it took them to build a wall, and the kid came back to life after 3 days. That's the story. Very thirsty. It's a wild story. There's another story over here. It says... there was a man who lived in Persia in Iran, and would travel to Iraq all the time to visit Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai asked him, when are you going back to Persia? He says, I need to go now. I need to go back home. The Ben Ish Chai says, wait, don't go so fast. Delay your departure. The man says, you know what, I'm going to take my chances. I'm going to join the next caravan. I can't. I need to go home fast. Along the journey, the caravan was attacked by bandits who stole everything, and he barely escaped with his life. So I wish I listened to the Ben Ish Chai. The other story is also a story. There was a young man in Baghdad who became engaged, but he discovered that his fiancée had a cataract in her eye. So he broke off the engagement, and the girl was very pained, and she ran away from home. So her parents couldn't find her. They went to the police, couldn't find the girl. They eventually got to Ben Ish Chai. They said, we lost our daughter. Our daughter ran away. So the Ben Ish Chai says, tell them the daughter's alive and well, and she's hiding in her aunt's house. And you should know, this girl, nothing bad's going to come, she's going to be very happy. So they go to the aunt's house, they find the girl over there, and then later on that boy who broke off with her said, no, I've changed my mind, I want to marry her. So She's dancing at a wedding, so his words came true. He could see the future. Amazing. This is true. This is a story of Rabbi Ephraim Menashe HaKohen, who was the Ben Ish Chai students, which is also an amazing story, because he was like an urchin, a street urchin. Rabbi Menashe Ephraim HaKohen was one of the big Mekubalim of Parat Yosef, biggest Mekubalim of Parat Yosef, with the Rabbi Yitzhak Haduri. There's a beautiful picture over here of them learning together. Rabbi Yitzhak Haduri, all the big Mekubalim. They had a special branch in Parat Yosef, a special room for Mekubalim. You learn Kabbalah. As part of the Sephardic heritage is you learn Pshat, Remez, Drash, you learn Kabbalah, you learn everything. So he says this story. He was once walking with the Ben Ish Chai through the streets of Baghdad. Suddenly, to his amazement, the Ben Ish Chai turns around and starts pleading, apparently to no one. He cries, he's begging for his life. Abraham, Abraham. He says, why are you doing this? Don't do it, Abraham, Abraham. Looking around, no one around. There's no Abraham, no one. When they go home, one of his friends comes to him. He tells them, I just heard terrible news. I heard this on the way here. There was a follower of the Ben Ish Chai named Abraham, suddenly died while eating watermelon. And the watermelon was contaminated by a snake's venom. The Ben Ish Chai had somehow sensed the tragedy and started protesting. Abraham, Abraham, don't do it. Abraham, don't do it. He's died. But he couldn't stop it. So. A certain Jew once visited the Ben Ish Chai to ask his advice. Before the man left, the Ben Ish Chai gave him a small book of Tehillim and said, read this on the way back home. The man left and hired an Arab wagon driver to bring him to his destination. During the journey, as they passed through an uninhabited, deserted area, the Jew saw the Arabs looking at him, very strangely. He started to read the book of Ben Ish Chai, of the Tehillim that Ben Ish Chai gave him. The driver noticed the Ben Ish Chai was reading a book, and that's what he's reading. He said, I'm reading Tehillim written by King David. The man fell at his feet. He said, I wanted to kill you, but I'm scared the soul of King David will come and avenge your blood. So these Arabs are very superstitious, at least they were at that time, they probably still are. So just because the Ben Ish Chai gave him, saved his life. So amazing, these are the stories, there's lots of stories over here, Ben Ish Chais. Now what's the most fascinating story, which I can't get over, is when Ben Ish Chai dies in Baghdad, his student Rav Chazan in Yerushalayim has a dream. Wild story. And he sees the angels bringing the body of the Ben Ish Chai and burying him in Har Zeitim. Wild story. So in the morning he gets up and he goes to Har Zeitim, exactly the location of his dreams, finds a freshly dug grave over there. So he puts a tomb of the Ben Ish Chai in Har Zeitim. But the Ben Ish Chai is buried in Baghdad. The Ben Ish Chai is one of the few people with two graves. Two tombs. Tomb in Baghdad and tomb in... Wild story. But it was exactly, the truth is that's when he passed away. On the night of the 30th of Elul, after midnight, the Kabbalist, Rav Abraham Eides, was immersed in Torah study when he suddenly fell asleep. In his dream, he saw Rav Abraham Lanyado dressed in white. Rav Abraham says, where are you going? He said, you should know Rabbeinu Yosef Chaim has passed away in Bavel. I'm going to accompany him to Jerusalem. Rav Abraham Ades awoke and fell asleep again. In his dream, he saw Rabbi Yosef Chaim's coffin. A huge crowd had gathered, and certain rabbis who recognized delivering eulogies. He woke again, but no one heard that Ben Ish Chai died. In the morning, he visited the Hacham in the Babylonian community and asked them if they heard any updates. They said they knew he was ill, but they didn't know he died. He kept quiet. Several hours later, a telegram arrived in Jerusalem from Baghdad announcing he had dead. The Ben Ish Chai died. He told them which rabbis should eulogize him, which sequence, as he saw in his dream, and this is precisely what they did. This is wild. Now, what happened was in Baghdad, many years later, his remains had to be disinterred. They want to build this road through the Jewish cemetery. And they gave him 3 months to move all the bones. Imagine all the... So you have to dig out the Ben Ish Chai. So first, the Arab comes to dig the Ben Ish Chai's grave. He lifted his hand, he couldn't move. He was paralyzed. He told the people to go to the Hachamim and see what they can do to get him... So what happens? All the Hachamim come, including the Rabbeinu's grandson, Hacham David, who moved to Israel eventually. They prayed for mincha, they begged for forgiveness. His hand started to move. Then he resumed digging, surrounded by a huge crowd of Arabs. When they took out the Ben Ish Chai's body, everyone saw he was covered in fresh shrouds, as though he'd been buried nearly an hour earlier. This caused a tremendous Kiddush Hashem. Hard to imagine. Anyway, I'm going to stop here.
Did they rebury him?
Yeah, they reburied him, but they reburied him in Iraq.
They didn't bring him to that
No.
freshly dug grave.
No.
Was he in touch with any of the Eastern European rabbis?
Yes.